zoom out to outer space. Imagine you're an astronaut and imagine what the planet looks like from outer space. You all got an image in your mind? Yeah, so when we think about it, the planet is about 70% ocean. So it's just something that's really important to consider. We've had lots of amazing talks today about climate change as well. So I'm hopefully going to bring some of that into the talk today and just show you, just focusing in on Tralee Bay. So we can see that the planet is huge and Tralee Bay might be tiny, but it's incredibly rich and incredibly diverse for its area. Could I just get a show of hands of how many people here live here or come here regularly, very familiar with the bay? Okay, cool. And how many people swim? Or snorkel? Okay, we've got lots of swimmers. How about snorkelers? Divers? Okay, so yeah, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. A lot of you have a lot of experience and love the ocean already. So hopefully I'll capture your hearts and minds a little bit more. Okay, so I mentioned the word diversity. So Tralee Bay is full of amazing species. And one word you're probably hearing an awful lot is the term biodiversity. But it can seem a bit disconnected sometimes as to what exactly is biodiversity and why should I care. So the way I like to think about it and the way I like to try and get people to imagine why every single species is important is if we think of the wing of a plane. Now, I'm going to presume most of you have either been in a plane or in a boat before. And when you're looking out the wing of the aeroplane, you're seeing that wing that's keeping you up in the air. It's made up of lots of rivets and bolts and joints and lots of little different parts. Now, if we think about biodiversity, we could lose one bolt or one rivet, and the wing will still be doing its function. It will still structurally be functioning. But how many bolts and rivets could we lose off the wing plane before the wing no longer functions and keeps us in the air? So it's the same thing with biodiversity. How many species can the ecosystems really tolerate the loss of? So when I think about biodiversity, I like to kind of think of that kind of concept of the wing of a plane. So as I said, I'm going to focus today on Tralee Bay because many of you, obviously, we're situated right here on the edge of Tralee Bay, and it really is just magical. I might be a little bit biased because some of you might know me. I live back in Brandon. I actually moved over from the UK, so sorry about the bit of an accent, but I just absolutely adore the place, and I'm sure lots of you know just about quite how crazy passionate I am about it. So what's the beauty that lies beneath? Some of you have snorkeled before, so you know some of the diversity that's down there. But what's the first thing that's coming to your mind? Kind of keep that in your mind. When you're thinking underwater, what are you thinking of? And just see if it's kind of links up with what we're going to talk about today. So pretty much all of the pictures I'm going to show you today, you can find about 10 meters offshore, within about 30 foot. So you don't have to go far out to find some really incredible species. So what lies beneath? I love this one. I like to think of Tralee Bay as the marine Irish Serengeti, because when we think of really species diverse bays, we often think about places like in Africa. You've got fields of antelope or giraffes and lions, but actually here in Tralee Bay, we've got the same principle going on just underneath the water and above the water. Of course, you've heard lots of talks about the amazing birds, but myself and Sean are going to focus on what lies below that blue glassy surface. As I said, I like to think of it as the Irish marine Serengeti. And this species here, some of you have probably encountered them before if you've been swimming around Phoenix. This is the common stingray. A lot of people don't know, but we have the stingray here in Ireland. And this is you very privileged. They won't hurt you. Of course, they've been made famous by Steve Irwin, but they're very shy and they will always try to swim away. So unless you accidentally step on one, they're going to try and skirt out of your way. But we've got stingrays that are actually coming in and using the area for part of their kind of breeding life cycle as well. So it's a really, really important place. It's one of the only places kind of in Ireland as well that you'll get the stingrays coming in very, very regularly. So another species that you might have seen washed up on the beach or seen around, or maybe if you've been snorkeling, you might have appreciated it, is of course the seagrass or the eelgrass. Now you've just had, maybe some of you were at the talk earlier about climate change and carbon capture. And of course we've got a lot of nature-based solutions. So we've got some really good opportunities right here in Tralee Bay for some really good kind of carbon-based solutions. And one of them, of course, is seagrass meadows. And seagrass meadows have been found to be able to capture huge amounts of carbon just through the trapping of silt in amongst their roots and rhizomes. So it's estimated that seagrass around the world captures around 15% of all of the marine storage of carbon. So we're really, really lucky to have such an amazing ecosystem right here, just off the shore. And of course, some of the species that are associated with seagrass is, of course, the seahorse. You might not know, but we have 2 species of seahorse here in Ireland, the short-snouted, and then, of course, there's juvenile fish as well that really, really rely on seagrass meadows for nurseries and for shelter to hide in. So if you imagine the meadows of the seagrass, you can imagine how that's a really good place for all of these species to hide in. So not only are our seagrass meadows acting as habitat for species, but also as a juvenile nursery for a lot of, say, the commercial fish species. So when people are eating their fish and chips, this seagrass can provide a really important habitat for the younger life stages of those fish. Some of you might be big into birds, and of course there's lots of species that really, really rely on seagrass as well, such as your Brent geese, your widgeon. So actually there's a really good project called the Seagrass Project, which you're working across the UK and Ireland to try and help restore seagrass meadows. And they have hashtag for Cod's sake, save the seagrass. And it is that concept that it's a really important nursery ground for a lot of species. So there's just some pictures of the Brent geese, of course, that you'll be very familiar with, and the widgeon. And there's 2 species of seagrass here in Ireland. We have a very small one, which looks a bit insignificant, but if anyone's been on the kind of the back of going over to Fenit Island, there's a really big bed of this seagrass, which is a much smaller one. And then, of course, the bigger one, the Zostera marinus, is the other species, which you'll see in my video in a little while. Okay, so as I said, we have meadows of green out there, but we've also got forests of gold. So often when we see seaweed, it's that smelly stuff washed up on the beach. But if you ever appreciate it and get the chance to go out snorkeling in amongst it, you'll find all of the different colours and varieties and species that are associated with seaweed. So 90%, it's estimated 90% of all of our marine life at some stage rely on seaweeds and kelp forests for some part of their life cycle. And again, if we're talking about climate solutions and ways to capture carbon, by supporting biodiversity and some of our marine habitats, we've got some really good natural, nature-based solutions already available. Seaweed, for instance, even within the mucus on the seaweed, is helping to capture carbon. And something really cool about kelp, if anyone knows it, it grows incredibly fast and generally estimated to grow about 20 to 30 times faster than that of a terrestrial plant. So it's got huge potential for massive carbon capture. So marine megacities. I'm sure all of you know what Tralee Bay is particularly famous for. Of course, is the oyster, the native oyster. In actual fact, it's one of the most important native oyster beds here in Ireland. So it's one of the last kind of recruiting native oyster beds. So and again, that's living right here in Tralee. And if you look at this image, you can see just how diverse it is. So when we think about coral reefs, we often think about species complexity. We think about the clownfish, we think about the dories that we've seen on the movies and all those bright, colourful corals. But actually, oysters and mussels actually create the same kind of reef structure that support other species. So you can see in this image just how many species are actually going on in amongst this oyster bed. And we have this here in Tralee. I like to think of oysters as kind of ecological superheroes. So not only in the good situations, they're actually able to capture carbon, but they're creating structure for all of the other species. So for food items, as well as for baby fish, as well as species that I'll come around to in a little while. So this is our humble flat oyster. Doesn't look like very much, and it's often kind of hard to sell as a superhero. But in actual fact, they're ecosystem engineers. They're creating a really unique habitat, and right here, just off the shore here. Again, me with my dogs. So oyster beds. What is an oyster bed? So when we're talking about oysters, we often refer to them as oyster beds. So they kind of lay up. They're what we call gregarious and conspecific. So they like to be where each other are, and they like to settle and reproduce or create new oysters on the shells of other oysters. So it's really important that they have the ability to do that. Now, we've lost about 95% of the native oyster beds across the world. So the bed we have here in Tralee is within that remaining 5% of what used to be in existence. So it's really, really vital and really important bed that we have right here in Tralee. So as I said, it supports a huge amount of species, such as this beautiful one down here. A lot of you probably saw wild isles. We've all seen David Attenborough. We see those really amazing species. Well, this is a nudibranch. This is one of the species that can be found cruising, eating algae in amongst the oyster beds as well. So what do oysters, what have they ever done for us? Well, one of the things they do actually is they filter water. You can see this image on the side there, just the difference in the water quality. And oysters, filter feeders, so they're taking in huge amounts of nutrients out of the water, and they're helping to support really good water quality. So in doing so, they're actually creating and cleaning the habitat for other species as well. And of course, not only do they have a really big environmental value, but also a cultural and heritage value, which of course anyone who's from here in Fenit knows that there's been a really big association with the people of Fenit and around Tralee Bay for many, many years. And a lot of people rely on it for their livelihoods as well. So yeah, it's estimated that an oyster can filter around 200 litres of water a day. Now, if you imagine a bed of oysters, you're looking at thousands and thousands of oysters. Imagine how much water they're actually just cleaning, just to find their own food. Another thing that they do is coastal defence as well. So by creating that kind of rough seabed, they actually slow down the velocity of the water coming towards our shores. And a lot of people here are probably familiar with Fenit Coast Conservation and the work that the Maoris are doing. So we've actually got some really good species out there, such as kelp meadows, seagrass meadows, and oysters that also help to reduce that effect of coastal erosion that can be caused through increasing climate change. So this is just a picture. So you can imagine just underneath the water of Tralee Bay, all of the different species you can find. And the complexity and the amount of diversity we see out there is very much down to all of these very core kind of fundamental habitats. So our oyster megacities, to our meadows of green, to our forests of seaweed. So what is this a picture of? If any of you have visited me over in the tent this morning, you probably already have seen some of these. And this is where, so this is the Irish Elasmobranch Group. So Elasmobranch is a really complicated word for sharks, skates, and rays. Does anyone want to guess how many sharks there are in Irish waters? 200. Whoa, okay. A little bit too high. Anybody else want to go? 20, much closer. So of all of the species that we found, do you want to go again? Oh, a bit too high. So yeah, of all the species that we found so far that pass through our waters, I'm not sure if any of you know, but the Irish marine territory is about 10 times the size of its land mass. So you think of the island of Ireland, and actually the Irish marine territory is 10 times that size. So we're responsible for a huge, huge area of the marine environment. And so within that marine territory, we've actually found 39 species of shark visiting our waters. And that's a really amazing diversity of shark species. And then we've also found 33 species of skates and rays, either are here all year or they come and visit us. So some of the ways that you might not, if you're not big into snorkeling and you want to encounter or have that kind of connection with skates or sharks, is through the mermaid's purse. You're probably all familiar with these, washed up in amongst the seaweed, looking a bit kind of bedraggled and a bit like dead seaweed. In actual fact, they're made of collagen, and these are the egg cases of some of our skate species. So the stingray I mentioned earlier gives birth to live young, but a lot of the skate species, or all of the skate species, actually lay egg cases. And so what they do is they drop the egg case on the seabed in amongst those meadows of green and those forests of seaweed, and then they leave them there, and they're on their own for the next 9 months to 15 months, depending on the species. And they've got to survive inside this egg case. And then once they hatch out, a single little skate is going to hatch out. And then it's got to survive and make it all the way through adulthood. So you can see there's no parenthood when it comes to skates. It's a tough life for sharks and skates. So a really good way you can get in contact is with what's below the surface is actually to do mermaid purse hunts as well. So if you come and visit me in the tent afterwards, I'll happily talk you through some more of that. I like to put names on, but of course I think of Tralee Bay as kind of the Bay of Angels. So some of you might be very familiar with what you see on the screen here. So this is something called the International Union of Conservation. They do huge amounts of research and assessments of species around the world to find out how endangered species are. So we actually are really really privileged to still have some very rare species hanging on here in Tralee Bay. And for some reason, Tralee Bay, of all of those reasons I've already shown you, is really important for skates and shark species to actually come and have their young. So we've got a nursery here for elasmobranchs. This bottom image just shows, this was back from 2016, I think, how a third of all of our elasmobranchs, though, are in that threatened category. They're at that threat of extinction. So this species, if anyone follows me on Facebook, gets plagued by these all the time. So this species here in my hand, that is my hand holding it, that's a white skate. So this is a critically endangered species. And really the only place you'll find it here in Ireland is here in Tralee Bay. I'd love to hear from you if you've ever found this particular one as well. So really very much on the edge. And this is just, you can see the size of the adults. So they get really, really large, really big bodied. This one is what we call critically endangered, so very much on the edge of extinction. So these are the other species. So here in Ireland, this common stingray is actually listed as endangered. And then the ungulate skate. The stingray largely because it's only down here that you'll find the stingray. You won't really find it around the rest of Ireland. And then the ungulate skate, if anyone's ever seen one, they are just the most beautiful skate. Incredible marble patterns on the back. Very, very beautiful. But again, one of the last and only places you'll really find the ungulate skate is here in Tralee. So when you're looking for egg cases, you're unlikely to find that egg case anywhere else other than around the shores of Tralee. These are some of the other shark species that we have just cruising around in the bay. So we've got our spur dog and our taupe. So these are some of the shark species. I hope I'm not putting anyone off of swimming. Sharks are going to veer well away from you, so don't worry, you're perfectly safe. So just in case anybody's a little bit worried. Okay. And then this is a shark that I'd like to briefly talk to you about as well. So really passionate, as you can tell, about everything marine. But I realized that there's a species right here, as well as the white skate and the ungulate skate, right here in Tralee that needs somebody to shout for it and to shout how amazing it is. So this is a species that used to be really common in Tralee Bay, but due to the recent times has had a massive decline, but they're still hanging on in Tralee Bay. They occasionally are counted in the Irish Sea, but by and large, this is the last place that you'll still encounter the angel shark. And what a great name it has, because if you look down on it from above, it looks very much like an angel, and that's where it gets its name. Its Latin name, Scotina, also tell you that it's flattened. And so what this shark does is it lives in the sand bed. You're not going to find it swimming around. It buries itself in the sand and then will jump up and catch its prey. So the reason why I've started this project, the Angel Shark Project, is one, to try and bring everybody together to try and find ways that we can to help these species and to help this amazing bay that we have and are so very, very lucky to have to call home. But what is the angel shark? Well, I like to think of it as an umbrella species. So just like the giant panda of the WWF, it's a really good species, because if you can help protect the angel shark, you're going to help protect a lot of other species as well. So hopefully this will play for us. I'm not sure if somebody might need to help me with this one. So this was actually taken in Wales. They're doing they've got Angel Shark Project Wales as well. So the project I've started is part of a wider international project. We're trying to help the angel shark right across their range. And this was captured in Wales, where they thought they were completely extinct. So this is a real sign of hope. So you can see just, there's not many of us that will ever be lucky enough to see that, but hopefully with a lot of effort and a lot of team help and community help, we can actually see that species be really, really common once again here in Tralee. So angel sharks need you. I would love to come and, if anybody would like to come and talk to me, I'll be in the tent for the rest of today and around tomorrow. I'm doing a bit of a seashore event for kids as well tomorrow, so I hope to see some of you down there. We'll be looking for some of those skates and rays, egg cases. So that'll be at 3:00 tomorrow, but do come and talk to me in between. And if you've ever encountered or have a memory of an angel shark, I'd love to hear from you. But I'd like to finish up. This is my niece. I just had to embarrass her, really. But I'd like to finish up to say thank you for one, but also I've got a bit of a footage of just some. Now you're going to see some amazing footage from some proper filmographers, but just some footage that I've gotten while I've been snorkeling out there, just to show you what I'm seeing when I'm out snorkeling and diving. Amazing. So thank you all so much for listening. I'm going to let Sean take over and talk about cetaceans. So Sean's working with the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group, and some of you probably have worked with us already. But we do a lot of like dolphins strandings as well. So there was actually a stranding in camp just yesterday. Some of you might have been there with us. But Sean's going to talk about some of the species that are off there and some of the work of the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group too. So I'll let Sean take over, and we'll have questions afterwards, or you're more than welcome to come and chat to me in the tent afterwards too. Thank you.
So, as you know, we're in Tralee Bay, and this place, just as Louise pointed out, is very important for a variety of species. And some of those are some dolphins you may be familiar with. So in Ireland, we have over 26 species of cetaceans. So these are from the little harbour porpoise all the way up to the big blue whale. We don't necessarily see them all on the same day, but we have a variety of habitats that they like inshore and also offshore. So some of the species are quite rare, and we only know they're around because they've washed up dead. So there's a lot of information we still don't know about these species, even though they're quite large. So in Ireland, we do have some legislation protecting these species. I'll run through it a little bit quick, and we'll go on to some other bits and pieces. But yeah, so whaling is banned in Ireland, but we also have regulations to protect them from the likes of disturbance, which is a key thing as we start to use our oceans in very different ways. And these animals, they've been around for a long time, but they haven't necessarily come up against some of the sounds and sights that we now are putting into the ocean. So the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group, it was set up in 1990, and it's an NGO that's dedicated to studying and researching these species, but then also trying to inform management on how we should protect them in our environment. So here you can sort of guess the species. This is a humpback whale. This particular humpback whale was recently seen over in Canada. So this one was seen off Hookhead in Wexford, and Joanne took this photo. But he wasn't seen for many years, and now he's reappeared off Canada. So we're all connected right across the ocean. So the Irish waters were protected as the first whale and dolphin sanctuary in Europe, and really in those early days we knew about these animals from strandings and some sightings. But over the years we are now using new techniques to study them, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the way we study these animals, we use our eyes, but we also use our ears. So every 4 years or so, we do some surveys in the protected places for species. So here we were right next to the Shannon Estuary. That's a very important place for bottlenose dolphins. We have a resident population there. But then also on more the Kerry side, to the west of us in the Blaskets, we have a special area of conservation for porpoises. So we do surveys every 4 years to monitor how their population has been doing and to see if these protected places are actually protecting them and helping them in the way we would like them to. So we can use, we also take photos of animals. So we can identify them and follow them as they go around the Atlantic. And in the case of humpback whales, it's quite easy when you get the tail. But acoustics is very important too. So the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group takes sightings from people. So if any of you guys ever see any animals, you can report them, either alive or dead. It all contributes to understanding what we have here and how it's changing. Because as I'm sure you're aware, climate change is having a huge effect on a variety of species. And we're now finding in Ireland, we're getting some warmer water species moving in, and we're losing our colder water species. They're moving more north. So you have to think of the white-beaked dolphin and the white-sided dolphin. They seem to be moving more north. They like particular places in that way. So with sightings, they can give us a lot of information. There's another type of sightings we can do. It's land watches. So we can sit on a headland for 100 minutes, look for whatever's in the area, and we know then over the months, over the years, what the seasonal pattern is for different species. And you guys can do this. And if you get in touch with the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group, they can tell you how to how to do it in practice. So offshore is much more difficult. In Ireland, we associate like species like the humpback whale, the minke whale, common dolphins, bottlenose dolphins, being inshore. But most of our marine area is actually quite offshore, and it's difficult to actually get there. So in the case of the Celtic Voyager and the Celtic Explorer, which is this vessel, we can sometimes get out there and see what's happening out there. But you need a big boat to get out to the open ocean. So a little bit closer to home, we have quite a lot of research done here around the Shannon. One that started in 1993 is the photo identification. So this is where we take photos of the dolphins when they come up to surface. And as you see here, different dolphins have different markings. And this is very powerful. So we can see who's who over the years. And some of the dolphins that were seen in 1993 are still alive. One of them, he's called Kevin Costner. He's up in Scotland now. He suddenly moved from the Shannon up to the Boyne, then over to Liverpool, and now he was last seen in Scotland, I think last October. So you can get a real good idea of how these dolphins use our areas. We also see sometimes there's deformations, and this is quite difficult for these dolphins to swim. So you can see it's a scoliosis just behind the fin, the dorsal fin. I've seen one of these dolphins before, and it's a bit sad to see it. They can't really swim as well as the others, and unfortunately, that dolphin wasn't seen again. So usually they're around for a few seasons, but then it's difficult to survive. But that's wildlife. So the photo identification, we see that bottlenose dolphins, they swim all around Ireland, and then we've seen some of them go over to Scotland. And one of the friendly dolphins that is now in France, it's called Randy. He moved from Dunquin, where he was called Donny. Then he went to England, he was called George, and he was causing a bit of problems. Then he moved to France, and he's been hanging around there since. So they can cover a huge amount of area. And taking photos helps us a lot to track them. So these are just some areas where we've seen the dolphins moving around that Joanne was working on, which it's super interesting to see. Live stranding. So as Louise just said, yesterday over in camp, there were 2 common dolphins that unfortunately live stranded. And these happen quite frequently in this area. It's one of those mysterious things, but thankfully Louise is here to actually help them. And then quite a few of you guys have been here too to try and help these dolphins. Sometimes it works out, but sometimes it doesn't. The reason why they strand here, we don't fully know, but maybe because they're coming in to feed over in Clahan and the tides catch them out. But this dolphin, she washed up in Bale around 2009, and she was refloated. And then a couple of months later, she was seen with a calf. So it was very good that she survived, and this calf is still alive. She's still in the estuary, and this dolphin is still around. So sometimes you have a nice endings. So this is the same dolphin then in 2012 with the calf. So she's called Sandy Salmon because she threw up salmon when she was on the beach, and then the calf is called Muddy Mackerel. So it's creative names, you know. So over here, a couple of years ago, you guys probably knew about the celebrity dolphin called Spertle, who came here. She was up in the Moray Firth in Scotland, where they have a resident group there too. I think it was around 2016, she live stranded. And unfortunately, she was in an area that people couldn't really access for a while because it was quite dangerous, and the sun was out. So when these dolphins wash up alive, because of their blubber, they're very insulated. And unfortunately, she started getting very bad blisters, and she was sunburnt. So you see here on the right, she's very red, and that's the damage from being stranded. Fortunately, she was put back in the sea. And then I think we just play a video here. This is her in Phoenix. So perfect, thank you. So you see, this is her in Phoenix, and she's recovered. So she has quite a lot of scarring, but she was happy out here. So this was filmed just outside in Phoenix. So unusually, she just decided to move down here with a couple of Scottish dolphins, and they stayed in Phoenix for a while, but then she moved back to Scotland. But now we have 3 dolphins who stayed here, who are Scottish, which is quite interesting. They're still around. So they're called the Phoenix Tree, and some of you guys may have seen it. They can be here quite close to the beach, between here and the lighthouse, and then also under St. Brendan's statue. I've seen them around there too. They're quite interesting, and they're very curious. So in the underwater environment, sound is very important, but the animals are affected by a variety of issues. So when the animals are in the sea, they have to use sound rather than their eyesight to actually find prey. And these little guys are harbor porpoises, and they're very, very, they really depend on sound. So what they do is, it's called echolocation. So it's like a bat. So they'll send the sound out, and then they'll receive the sound. And they can visualize where their prey is, and then they go and catch it. But they can also find other animals and orientate themselves in the sea. So here, you see they have what's called a melon. So it's on top of the head, And this is like full of a sort of special oil and tissue. So they make a sound with one side of their nose, their blowhole. They send it out, it hits the target, comes back through the lower jaw, into the ear, and then they can visualize what's there. So harbor porpoises are constantly clicking and looking for food. For dolphins, they make clicks, but they also make whistles. So the whistles are, they use it for communication, but then they can also sort of identify themselves as well. They're very sensitive to sound. And sound that we produce can often affect them. So boat noise, that has an impact, but you have also very loud sounds like sonar, construction work noise. These things really permeate in the environment because sound travels very far in the water, and it can affect these animals and they can move away, or sometimes it can kill them. So in the Shannon Estuary, it's a special area of conservation, so it's very important for these dolphins. There's at least 145 different individuals there, and they live sort of between Loophead and Carryhead back into as far as Limerick City. But in recent years, we see they move more north in the Clare coast, and they also come down to here, and they go to Brandon Point. So over the years, there's been acoustic monitoring that Joanne has been involved with and has been leading. So there are listening stations all around the estuary so that we can see how they use the place and then also when they're there. So this is called a C-pod. It records their clicks, and as you can see, over the years, there's a huge amount of data that's been collected. So we can monitor these animals over a wide amount of time, because there's only a certain amount of effort you can do by sitting on a boat or land looking, and then at night we can't see the dolphins anyway. So sound and sound recording helps us massively to find these animals. So I'll just briefly go through these slides. It just shows you that in different parts of the estuary, the dolphins use it at different times of the year. And so this is likely linked with their food. It depends on where the prey is, and the dolphins know how to target it and exploit it. Because the Shannon Estuary is a very tidal area. It's quite extreme in many respects, but it's also becoming quite industrialized. So this is a very important place for dolphins, but strategically for Ireland, it's also a place we're now developing for shipping and other marine uses. But we have to find space for the dolphins. They've been here longer than us. So yeah, noise is regulated by quite a lot of different legislation in Europe. But afterwards we can talk about this in more detail. So a big project that happened in 2015 and 2016 that was funded by the government was Observe Acoustic. There was also an Observe Aerial, where planes were used to spot animals offshore, and Observe Aerial 2 has just, it seems like it's just finishing up now. Maybe they might do another season, but they've been surveying offshore. So when we talk about whales, typically in Ireland, we're looking at areas like off Cork, Kerry, into Wexford as well, like in the past, and also up the north where we used to go whaling. But a lot of our territory is offshore, and we have a huge amount of the continental shelf off Western Europe. And this is a very important place for our sperm whales, our beaked whales, offshore dolphins. But because we can't visually be there so often, because of the cost from vessels, but also storms, it's very hard to get out there. We can monitor them using acoustics. So this project was amazing to give us an insight into how beaked whales, blue whales, fin whales, they all use our offshore areas. So these are the places where there were listening stations. And there was also some surveys, so vessels were crisscrossing and looking for animals, so we could then estimate how many were there. So yeah, I'll skim through this a little bit now, but you can see all along the edge there's some indents, and these are canyons, and these canyon systems are really, really important for deep divers. But there's a lot that we don't know about how these operate just yet, which is quite exciting. So AMRs were used. These were like very heavy-duty microphones that you could put over 1 kilometer deep, and they were left there for a couple of months. So this is the setup. They're placed at the bottom, but they floated up slightly. And then when you wanted to pick them up, you send the signal. It unravels itself and it floats to the surface. But it could take an hour for this to float back up to the surface. Like, they're really, really down deep. So this is just some results, just to show you the importance of these offshore areas. So for fin whales, they were mostly recorded sort of from April to October, thereabouts. And this is a time when we would see fin whales more inshore as well. But like we say, we only get an insight into them offshore. Offshore, they're likely eating krill. We know they eat it in sort of September, October, but it's just from little insights we've gotten over the years. So these are just some of the trends then for recording these animals. But 15 years ago, this would have been just like dreams. You would never have seen these graphs. We would never have known any of this about these whales out there. We would have a few dots on a map from sightings, but not in such a high detail. So this is a really amazing work. So we'll see if this works. These are some of the sounds of the animals. I see it may not from my end, but okay, so this is a blue whale and a bottlenose dolphin. So it's a little bit of a mixture. So now we're on to bottlenose dolphins. So these are clicks. That's a blue whale moaning. You would normally not hear that. But it just gives you an idea of how these dolphins and whales view their world. So for the blue whale sound can travel 200 miles. For the dolphins, it's a bit more closer. So we know with the dolphins, they use it to find food, but also communicate. But the blue whales, we don't know how they find food. So there's a lot we don't know. This one. This is harbor porpoise. So it's really like almost like a bubbling noise. Then this should be killer whale. Yeah. Humpback whale. It's not really necessarily the big song that we associate with the whales. And then this is what we sound like. So there's quite a difference in sound. And depending on the vessel, this sound can travel quite far. So we don't sound so nice. So here, this is in Phoenix. So you recognize the lighthouse, but we have the birds feeding here. And this is the area where we see this the Phoenix tree quite a lot. So have some auks, some gulls. So these animals tend to use the areas to feed, the dolphins at least, but also calve and breed. So then these are the dolphins themselves. Might be a little bit more than the Phoenix tree. Yeah. So these ones are in the Maharees. So these are the Shannon dolphins that have sort of moved down into Brandon, and they're your bottlenose dolphins. So hopefully you guys have seen this over the years, and if not, hopefully you see it this summer. So then these are more bottlenose. They like the bow ride, so they're quite playful. So in this area, Joanna's also been involved in quite a lot of work with the acoustics monitoring this area. So there were three locations where sea pods were put in to listen and hear their clicks. And you can see over the months, it changes quite a lot in activity. So the summer months, it was going up quite a lot, but then in the winter, a little bit less. But the tidal cycle has its place in how these dolphins use the area. So then this is just activity during the day and also then the season. So yeah, it's it gives us information you wouldn't see typically. These are some recordings from here in Phoenix, but then also over in Brandon. So a sound trap was put in. So this actually records the sounds the dolphins make. So here you see the lines are like whistles. We have the clicks. So interestingly enough, dolphins that were here, the Phoenix tree, they seem to have a different signature whistle or different whistling sounds frequency to the ones over in Brandon. And these ones here are Scottish, and the other ones are over, inverted commas, Irish. So that's quite interesting, and hopefully the guys can look into it in more detail. But this wasn't possible without support from locals here, like John Woolley, and also the fishing community, because they were deployed with the guys. So that's it for this talk. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll show you some clips of the drone now, so I can show you that a bit briefly. A little bit about what I do in my PhD. I look at sperm whales, so I'm interested in their size and also age. And funnily enough, I got into the sperm whales here when one washed up dead in Gary William. So I use drones to measure them, but you can also get behavioral data. So here on this clip, these are bottlenose dolphins in Brandon. So you can see from above, you get an idea of how they're swimming, and they're quite calm. I'm sure you've seen plenty of drone footage where like people are almost parked on top of the animals to get nice Instagrammable posts. I don't like that personally. Like we know what height the dolphins can hear the drone at, and at this height they couldn't. So they're quite relaxed. They're just doing their own thing. So so I'll just show you some of the clips from over the years. I think the next one is they're a bit more lively. So we saw there in Joanne's talk that the dolphins come to the bow to bow ride it. But then here, this is from an aerial perspective. So some of you guys might have seen Celtic Mist, which is the research vessel of the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. This is that vessel, and you see the dolphins are quite playful. All around them in the sea, you can see these little circles. They're moon jellyfish. So when we were there at the time, the sea was pretty much purple. This was in 2021. And the dolphins are just having a good time checking us out, and it's quite nice for us. But they're big animals, so they can be about 3 meters long, and they can move around on like a toddler. So you can see a compass jellyfish now on the left, so a little bit bigger, but the rest are all moon jellyfish, which was quite interesting to see. So I think just with the next one, yeah, it just shows you with the jellyfish. So these are all jellyfish, moon jellies, all these little circles. So if you think about it, if you're looking through just a wall of purple, you won't see so much. But thankfully, the dolphins, they'll use their echolocation to find food. And just in the next clip, then we'll be able to see what they can do. So here we had these 2 dolphins. They were sort of staying away from the rest of the group. But and you see they're very relaxed, and they're just swimming about. They're not too bothered. But then behavior shifts, and you'll see that now in a second. So here, this is where they blow. And the one on the right, it's like twisting its head around a little bit. It's sort of having a look. And the one on the side as well, swimming on its side. But now, it's like something is triggered. And they're going very fast. So here you see, there's like a ray or something, and it's game over for the fish. So now they have it in the mouth of the one on the left. So it's like one swam to the side to sort of flush the other one, and then the second one rammed it. So it wasn't a good day for that fish. I'm not sure if it was like a flounder or a flatfish like that, or a skate or ray, but it wasn't a good day for it. But it gives you an idea of how these dolphins can find food when they're completely blind, practically. So then, yeah, this next one will be perfect. So they're very, very social and coordinated. So here, this is off Brandon Point itself. So with the drone, often you're trying to find the dolphins. With a whale, it's easy because you have the blow, or you see a bigger part of it, but you're flying a little bit blind at times. So they're going into the sun. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky. But these ones now they're going out from Brandon Point. But then they turn around, and then they're swimming very fast back in again. So it's quite interesting. They're very, very coordinated. So you see there's a few more dolphins coming in from the point. So they're doing like a pincer move on some prey. But then I was a bit too slow with the drone. But yeah, it's really interesting to see their behavior from this angle. So I think we'll go on the next one again, please. So here, this footage now is taken a little bit around the corner in Ballydavid. So if you think of the 3 sisters, now you have up in the top left, you have one minke. On the right center, there's another minke. And then in the middle is another minke. So humpbacks get a lot of attention in Ireland because they're big and charismatic. But minkies are a personal favorite of mine. So you have common dolphins, they can be about 2 meters. And then you have the minke, which is 10. And these are extremely fast whales. So it's nice to see them quite chilled. But you see, with the white on the fin, it helps a lot to try and find them with the drone. And with the next clip, we'll be able to see just when they're a little bit more active. So here, minkies, we don't know a lot about them still. We know sort of that they go to warmer waters to breathe. They come back with marks from cookie cutter sharks who like tropical waters. But we don't know their migration pattern. We know they come back here in the springtime, and they stay sort of the late summer, and outside of that, they're gone. But they come here to feed. So this one, quite relaxed, and then it goes into feeding mode. So now it's going very fast. And then there's with the mouth, and it's coming up. So the baleen whales, they're designed to take in a big mouthful of water, and they take the fish, and then they filter it out. So if you guys want to see how big a minke whale jaw is, we can show you over in the tent. It's about this size. And we can have a look there now. Just on the next one, it's a different style of feeding. And then we have one more clip, and then I'll leave you guys in peace. So here the minke is going very, very fast. Flips upside down, that's the belly, goes down vertically, and then disappeared. So their hunting style really seems to change depending on what prey they're after. I think they were after sand eel at the time. But then this last clip, this is sort of a really a take-home one. You see here the minke is swimming away, but just above it there are buoys. So this is from a creel line, and this minke is swimming quite towards it. So entanglement is a big issue for minke whales, and when this was happening, I was a bit worried that I was going to film that the whale was going to get entangled. But you see, just last minute it turns. In Scotland, we know it's the main killer of minke whales. In Ireland, we do have evidence that the minkies get caught in it and unfortunately get entangled. But it seems to be down to their perception of it. They may not see it because they don't do echolocation clicks like dolphins do. So they're a bit more at risk of potentially getting caught. But thankfully, this minke was fine, and then it does a deep dive and it goes looking for food again. So yeah, we do have our impacts on the environment, but animals that have been around for a long time don't necessarily have the tools to mitigate it or to survive these things. But thankfully, this minke was okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for your attention.